All right, guys, welcome to my channel. This is my first interview, so it might be a little rocky, but we'll make it work. Um, we're out of West Tennessee. Part of the club we are part of is the Tennessee Spin Masters. Um, this is my uncle Ruben Solorio. We'll do an interview with him first, see how it goes. Um, he's been in the hobby a long time, so I figured he'd be a good one to start with, and just kind of go from there. So, what's your life and what do you do for
Well, I
fun?
just retired. May will be 2 years. Just enjoying the birds and my church life, and just enjoying the extra time with the birds and people. So just enjoying life.
Right, exactly. Okay, so we'll start with a few questions and we'll kind of go from there. Um, Maybe next time I'll have some questions up on our Facebook page, and you guys can ask some questions to the guest. But the first one we're going to start with is how old were you when you got your start with birds?
I got my first pair of rollers when I was 8 years old. So back in 1967, my older brother Arthur is the one that got me started with the rollers. We had birds in our backyard all the time, but just kind of fell in love with the rollers at 8 years old. And then at 13, I noticed the girls and got rid of the rollers. And at 17, I realized the rollers didn't want to go out for ice cream or movies. You could feed them for chicken scratch. So I got my birds back when I was 17 years old. So I've had them straight now, going probably 40 something years, 45, 46 years.
Quite a while. What family did you guys start with?
We're not really sure because we just acquired birds. And at that time, we just called them tumblers. We really didn't know what they were. Then met different ones. They could have been old Pinson birds. Not really sure, but we met a man in the early 70s, Lee Pendleton. He had almonds. That's the first time we ever saw an almond roller. Acquired birds from him and just kind of flew an open loft. Didn't know nothing about kit competition or anything.
Um, did you guys become part of a club and learn more about the rollers, or how did you guys kind of get on the scene with the rollers? I mean, I know you guys, like you said, you had them, but you didn't really know what you had. So how did you guys kind of get introduced to like the clubs and stuff like that?
Well, see, I didn't know nothing about kit. I never heard of a kit box. I was driving my wife to work one day and I would see rollers, but I didn't know where they were landing. I was always dropping her off to work and me going to work. So one day I had dropped her off and I was coming to my job, going to my job, and I saw the birds land. So I thought, well, I'm going to be late for work today. And I followed the birds and knocked on the door. I ended up meeting a man named Billy McAfee. Through him, he introduced me to Don Olette, Dan Olette, and Ron Garcia. And that's the first time I ever heard of a kit box. And that was in 1981.
Okay. I think you had said that before, but I don't remember. Um, so what family, when you started knowing what families you had, or when did you get a family that was like, I wouldn't say established, but when did you actually, did you ever buy birds and get what you want, or how did that work?
Yeah, I had birds from different families. Didn't really know what they were other than Lee Pendle and a few from Olette. Good birds, real good birds, but I didn't have enough. And so I'd breed maybe 50 birds and have 5 good ones. And then I heard about a man named Richard Jackinet. But at that time in the 80s, you had to send them a deposit and be on a waiting list. So when I called him, I'd be on a waiting list for 12 weeks before he started breeding some. Found out about a man named Ken Higgins in Livermore, which was 2 hours north of me, and he had jackanet birds. And he actually got Black Rain, Sister, Lavender Laser, Rusty. He had all that stuff, and that's where I bought my first birds that I knew something about, and they were excellent birds. And back in 1985, December, I paid $25 a piece, so that was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
And so Ken Higgins had some really outstanding birds, and I got to watch a kit fly, and he told me to pick whatever I wanted. And I said, no. I said, the best bird that flew today may not be the best bird. So I said, this family picked me out 3 pairs like you were going to breed them. So it took him about 3 hours to go through all his paperwork and pick me out some really nice pairs. And so that's where I got 3 pairs. And then 3 weeks later, I went back and picked up 2 more pairs, and he had given me one.
Okay, so you had gotten, you said 6 pairs. How long did you keep that family? Do you still have any of that stuff?
I
Or
still have like 1 or 2 birds from that family. When I started flying the ones I bred, that were outstanding birds, but then Ken Higgins moved to Idaho, so I didn't really have a mentor, and I just kept flying the birds. And of course, I picked the fastest birds, the ones that were deep, and I started getting a lot of blue check white flight, red check white flies, red check self, and I didn't realize that I was weeding out the grizzle and the tortoiseshell factor, which I really needed for the frequency. And it took me a long time to understand that because I didn't have nobody teaching me.
okay, um, so when did you join a club, or did you ever join a club in California? I know you're in West Tennessee now. Did you ever join a club in California, or did you kind of just find your backyard?
Well, we flew in our backyard, but Don Olet was very instrumental. He started the PRA, Performing Roller Association, back in around '85. It was Don Olet, Ron Garcia, my brother Arthur, and myself in Don Olet's backyard. First time they put on a performing roller show at the Great Western. Chan Grover was the judge, and I won champion. And Don really did a lot of great things for the hobby. He's probably still doing things. I don't get to talk to him very much, but great, great roller man.
Okay. How long have you had your current family? Because I know you don't really have jackanets anymore. I know you have something else. So how long have you had them?
I met Danny Courtney late, I think October of 2004. I was pastor in a church in California and came back home to Tennessee, which is my home now. Went to a national fly, met Danny Courtney, saw some good birds, and then he invited me over and he wanted to give me some birds. I wasn't trying to get extra birds, so I picked up 1 pair of Andalusians because my wife liked the color, and watched his birds fly over and over. Outstanding birds, and so slowly we became friends. He'd give me birds, I'd bring them over and fly them. Then ended up with 2 or 3 good pairs from him: some yellows, some recessive reds, and some blue bars.
What drew you to the Courtneys from the jackanets?
Well, I think a lot of people want to take credit when they do something good, but they don't ever want to take the blame when they mess up.
Right.
Like I said, I got away from the tortoiseshells and the grizzles, and I lost the frequency, and then the birds started flying higher. The Courtney birds reminded me of the jackanets when I first got them. I mean, they flew, they wouldn't sky out on me. You could feed them. The Courtney birds were very easy to manage, and that's how my old jackanet used to be. So really, I messed up the jackanets. I'm not going to say the birds were bad, because excellent birds. I've got one hen that's 10 years old. She flew in our 20 bird kit last fall, and it was still the best bird at 9 years old.
Okay. So like you just said, they're easy to manage. So with them being easy to manage, do you have problems with them flying high, or they fly at a good height, or is there anything that you don't like about them?
The only thing that I've seen, number one, they eat more than any family of birds I ever had, but they perform real good. The thing is, young birds, you got to break them, because when they're young, they want to fly fast and circle. And I've moved my lofts away. They're a good distance from the trees. And the only way I could break them, I would get some darker, older hens to get them to lift. But that's probably the main problem that I would see. So if anybody gets the family of birds, that's what you'll need to look out for.
What would you say is like the best attributes that your birds have that you really like about them?
Well, I think one of the main things and I've judged, I've judged the state of Colorado 9 times. I've judged around Texas 3 times. I've judged Region 3A 5 times, and then Ted Blanzy's. There's good birds everywhere now. There's good rollermen with a lot of information, but the thing I like the most is they don't sky out. Okay,
Right.
that's the one thing that I've seen a lot of guys, and I don't know everything, but I've seen birds sky out too easy, and it's hard for the judge. My birds, if they go up, usually it's something that spooks them, and they'll go up maybe 5 minutes, and they hang around 300 feet is high for me. I like the birds anywhere from 150 to 250, and so that's what I like about it.
What would you say is like? I know you say when they're young they fly bad, but what's something about them that you wish you could, not have a problem you wish you didn't have with the Courtney birds that you have?
That's probably the main thing. They work really hard, but you got to feed them up. These aren't birds that you could starve back. I've had phone calls from people that got them. They're going to try this. They're going to try this. These birds eat. You got to feed them up. I mean, let them eat until they're done eating. Where I've messed up, sometimes cut the food back too far and have some bump roll down. But they're very easy to manage. That's what I like about.
Okay. Yeah, I've actually heard that for some people as well. That the Courtneys are they're pretty easy to manage compared to some other families of birds. When you're breeding, do you have specific qualities that you look for, or do you just kind of, I mean, roll to roll kind of deal, or do you have qualities that you like?
Well, first of all, the bird's got a kid. He can't be a problem. But I read an article. I can't find it. I read it. I guess William Pinson wrote it. And people had said best to best. Well, if it was that easy, we'd all be doing it. But I found that article years ago, and he said best to best if they're similar. So I think that word similar makes a big difference. And that's where my foundation pair came from. There were two birds that rolled maybe 15 to 20 feet. They weren't 25 would be deep, but they would roll 2 times a minute, sometimes 3. And they were very much alike. And I produced a family out of that. I've got great grandsons that are in the kit and breeding right now. So the first thing I look for is speed.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing I look for is frequency. And the last thing I look for is depth. I like a bird at about 30 feet, but we know the rules. It starts at 10. It's got to be a minimum of 10.
Right.
I like deep birds, but I'm happy with a 30-foot bird.
So you wouldn't mind having a bird that was consistent at 15.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Instead of having a one that was 30, it took a while to get back to the kit. You would rather have a consistent 15-footer.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen really good birds. Probably one of the best birds I saw maybe a couple years ago, maybe 2019. I was at Larry Phillips, maybe 2018. After he had scored 376 on 11 bird, I was judging that kid. A lot of people there. He had a blue check mixed flight. It was probably rolling at the maximum 15 feet. But if I was to score that bird on the quality, he was scoring a 1819.
Wow.
I mean, he was exceptionally fast.
So would you, as far as like with the roll and stuff like that, would you ever bring birds in to improve your family, or do you think you kind of have what you need here, or would you ever bring anything in?
Well, I think I have what I need. I've only brought in one bird lately. Jeff DeWitt gave me a blue bar. I don't know if Larry Phillips bred it or Jeff. And Jeff's excellent roller man, great birds. He's scored the highest I've ever judged in a 20 bird, probably the best kid I've ever judged as far as 20 bird. He let the birds out, called time in at a minute and a half. The birds scored 1,303.84. And they were all down and trapped in 25 minutes. Best I've ever seen. But, as far as bringing birds in, our family, I'm learning even more about our family. The foundation pair that I have was a straight Courtney cock bred onto a ash red hen. She had Jackanet, Geraldine, and Olette almond. And that's what produced that was my foundation pair. And then I found out that the Courtney birds came through a gentleman named Jody Cardon, which had Carl Hardesty. I think it had Joe Marlette and I think the Stevens brothers. So there's a lot in there. And then the color, I think, came from John Castro. So in my family, there's probably 6 or 7 different families in there. And so if I see a need to bring some in, I will, but I will bring it in from men that I have confidence that they're good roller men, that I've seen their birds.
Right.
Jeff DeWitt, that whole area. Let me just say this. I've been privileged to judge Region 3A 5 times. Mike Brown was the first RD, and then Bob Sparkman and Wayne Greenway. And I'll tell any judge, if you ever get the opportunity to go judge Region 3A, you need to take advantage. I know they've asked my nephew Marco, but because of his work, he may not be able to go. But that it's a tremendous. I've met great people everywhere. Don't get me wrong, but that is a tremendous group of rollermen. I like their attitude. They may cut up a little, but they're all rooting for one another, and we need to keep this hobby fun.
I agree. Um, so back on when we were talking about the birds and rolling and stuff, how long do you normally fly a bird? Do you, I mean, do you ever just breed a bird and not fly it, or do you fly everything out that you breed? How do you go about that?
I say in the last 20 years, I fly out almost every bird. There may be one or two of a family that I've flown their siblings, cousins, nieces. And if the cockbird's getting old, I may put one bird out of that up. I actually have a tiger grizzle that I did that, and he's produced excellent birds. But I flew siblings, nieces, nephews, probably 15, 20 birds out of that family. Um, but I like a bird to fly. So, for instance, this year, I will start getting my young birds out in April. So they got to fly all the way. And I say this all the time till Thanksgiving. That is my cutoff date. On Thanksgiving weekend, if the bird has a chance to make the World Cup team, they get put up. And I fly everything. That's my winter kit. I bring them back out in the spring. They have to fly in the spring and all the way to the next fall. So, uh, and possibly the next World Cup. So I like at least a year to 18 months, 2 years before I put up a bird.
Okay, and when you're saying put up as in stock, I know
E-
you say you put birds away. You know, obviously through the winter because you're not going to lose good birds, right? For
right.
no reason. So that's how you go about it.
Yes.
Do you ever have problems with them bringing them back out and them flying or kidding or anything like that?
Well, one year I put them all in my breeder loft and they weren't looking outside. And when I let them out, they were kind of scattered and I got nailed a lot, lost probably 20 something birds because I brought them out early. We thought we were going to fly early. Still had falcons coming through. And that's part of the sport. If you're going to do it, it's just life.
Hmm.
But now what I do is I try to leave them in their kit boxes during the winter to keep that kit mentality. And it's March now, so I have a wire cage that I hang to the trap, and I let the birds go in and out. And with my winter birds, I try to keep 10 birds, whether they roll, flip, or not. They're just to bring the birds back out. And so usually around March 10th, I start adding the birds that I took out. And once I get the birds I'm going to fly in, then those 10 birds, they're really useless. And
Hmm.
so I don't have trouble with them anymore because they're watching the kit for 10 days and they're desirous to get to the kit.
Right, right. Um, what would what would you say to like someone? I know I've noticed on social media there's a lot of new people coming into the sport. What would be some advice that you would give either a new person or obviously yourself when you were coming into the sport or hobby, whatever you want to call it? What was some advice you would give, that you feel would help somebody, you know, progress quicker?
I think number one, you got to go see as many kits as you can see fly. When you see a good kit bird, ask permission from the owner if you can handle it. Ask all the questions you can about the bird, how they bred it. Get all the information. Talk to men that do good in competition, that qualify all the time. There's people that do good one year and then they never qualify again. And don't go out and start buying pigeons. Watch, because I've found this out that through all the years that I've raised pigeons, some of the best pigeons I've ever got were from good rolling men that gave them to me. Now I sell a few birds here and there. I'm actually going to sell some young. I got yellows, indigos, but the whole purpose for that is we're supporting a church in Baja, California. Every penny I get will be going to that church. But I'm not really into selling birds. I have sold some, but it's a hobby. Let's keep it a hobby. Let's make it fun. Let's help our young men. Because if you look at the NBRC, I don't know how many men 30 and under we have in the sport. We need to revive this sport, and we can't do it by just making it hard on these new guys coming in.
Right. And that's definitely something where I I see there's not really, I wouldn't say issue, that's not really the right wording, but I see that there's not very many, you know, younger people in the sport, and I don't know if it's because it's just not interesting to some of the younger people. But I do think that a lot of these older gentlemen should try and I mean in our club, the West Tennessee Spin Masters or the Tennessee Spin Masters, sorry. Um, we have a lot of older people, and everyone's pretty good about helping someone if someone needs some birds to fly. That's something they'll definitely do. So that's something good about our club. I do think that's definitely something that an area that we can improve on as
Right.
a group. What's your goals for 2023? Or do you have like a year? How do you do your goals for your birds? Do you have like a year goal or a 5-year goal, a 10-year goal? How do you what's your goals and what are you trying to get at?
Well, I'd say this year, and I want to win everything, of course, like everybody else does. But after all the years of flying rollers, everybody wants to do good in competition. Everybody wants to win. And I understand I do just as much as anyone. But I want to enjoy the birds and produce birds that I can have around and that will keep my family going. I have a bird, he's 2009, so he's what, 14 years old. I raised 3 babies off him. I flew them, flew them, bred them. And so most of my birds right now are directly related to that. And that came off that one foundation pair I had. So to me, I would love to win just like everybody else, but keep the family going good and breed good birds every year. And if you could breed 3 to 5 really, really good birds a year, and people could say, well, that's not very many. Well, you got the birds of prey, you got other things out here right now. We're having like 60-mile-an-hour winds. Anything can happen. And if you can breed a couple of good cockbirds, because they usually breed till the day they die. I had a bird 15 years old. I raised babies off him when he was 15 years old. So just keep the family going, enjoy it, enjoy the people, help somebody get further down the road.
Right. All going back to just trying to keep it fun. And
Yeah.
obviously, everyone likes to compete, and some people are just in it for that reason. But a lot of us do love the birds and that aspect. So I definitely agree with you on that one. What is something about the sport that you would like to? I don't want to say change, but something that you see that needs improved on. I know we talked about getting some younger people, but what is something about the sport if you could change it that you would change?
I would say just, and I don't get to go to the convention very often. I know they had some things there this year, but I would like to see more training for the judges that go judge. And it's hard to get judges right now because just taking time, if men work, taking time off work, away from their families, different things, just more training. And I think that we got to understand that we're doing this for fun. And I'm going to stay with that because obviously I've done good in birds, but it's not just the 2 flies a year, the World Cup and the Nationals.
Right.
What's kept me in birds for 45 years is the days that I'm in the backyard and there's nobody here and the birds are just smoking hot and nobody gets to see them. That's what keeps me in the birds. And interviews like this, not because it's me, hearing from people how they started and what their goal is as far as just enjoying the birds and enjoying people.
Right. I definitely agree with you on that one. What? So you've judged how many regions?
I've just the state of Colorado, I think 8 or 9 times. I judged Region 3A 5 times. I've held their fraternity flies. I did Ted Blanzy's region in Michigan. I did John Kelly's twice and Kevin Monroe's. And then I was an evangelist. So when I evangelized all over the country, I would take my NBRC bulletin. So Monday was the day that we didn't have church service or anything. So I had asked the pastors if they didn't have nothing for me to do, if I could go, take the day off, and I would get my NBRC, and wherever town I was, I'd look up someone in that town and go see birds fly.
Right.
So getting to see a lot of birds, and I think that's one thing. Again, to a new guy, see as many birds as you can. Don't get so busy about wanting to breed and this. Learn how to fly birds. Learn how to enjoy them, and be critical on yourself. But the main thing is you got to understand this. Don't try to please everybody else because you're paying the feed bill.
Right.
Okay. I'm retired now. I've got a pair of Oriental rollers, and Troy Copeland was good enough. He brought me 2 pairs. I can play because I'm retired. And people could say, I wouldn't do it. Well, I'm retired. Enjoy it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You worked all your life. Now it's time for you to enjoy your life. What has been the most points that you've got scored, in a fly, whether it was a national fly, a club fly, anything like that?
Well, in 2008, I had a real good kid, and I'm trying to. Alan Turcott came and judged me, and I usually fly at 6 o'clock in the afternoon because the way I work. I had a 20 bird cock kit, and they had flown together for 3 months. They scored 1,588.48. I had a 1.7 quality and a 1.6 depth. I had 19 breaks that were half turns or better. But I always flew at 6 in the afternoon. So when I flew in the finals, I had to fly at 8 o'clock in the morning on June. It was 90 something degrees with the humidity. And that same kit just barely scored 30 points. And they were doing everything to stay in the air. And, out here in Tennessee, Alabama, all these, we have that humidity. It just zaps the birds. And also, I made this statement: if you worked graveyard for 3 months, and then they put you on days, and the very first day you work days, they're going to come and evaluate you whether you're going to get a raise or not. It's kind of hard to do good.
Yeah,
And that's just how it is. That's just part of the game. And then the highest I've ever scored an 11 bird was a few years ago. Farrell Bussing scored me a 307. But I want to say this. This is a statement by Alex Hamilton, was one of the greatest statements I ever heard. We all do our best, but he said if you could get the birds, the judge, and the weather cooperating on the same day, you have a good chance. And that is true. Because you could train, you could have the birds, you could do whatever. If the weather's bad,
Yeah.
You get to do two things on fly day. You get to open the cage and let the birds out. And sometimes you get to call time in, sometimes you don't. So if you're a consistent flyer, eventually you're going to have a good day.
Right. So I don't know. This is just a question I thought of. If, let's say, you were going to start all over again with your family of birds, or not even your family, if you were going to get rid of all your birds, and let's say you're going to get another family of birds, is there a specific family that you see that's doing good and has consistently been doing good that you would consider getting into, or is that not really something you've thought
Well, I've not thought about it much, but like I say, and I'll repeat myself again, Gabe Glenn, awesome young man. The Kentucky area, you got Jeff DeWitt, you got Russell Clemens, you had Larry Phillips, you got a lot in that whole region 3A. If I put it this way, if I could not have the birds I have, which I've been working with the Courtney family, if you want to call it that, since 2004. If I was going to go get birds outside, it'd be in that region 3A.
Okay.
Okay. Because, I mean, they've had, I think in the last 10 years and maybe longer, they've had 3 national champion 11 bird guys. And Kerry Boone and, Jimmy Getz, some of the other guys. There's just so many good flyers there and so many good birds. That's, if I had to start all over again and didn't have the birds I had, that's where I'd go.
Okay. I don't know. It's been a big discussion online as of late. Giving credit to who you got your birds from, or and that kind of thing. I know you, and obviously my father is Marco. He has Courtney birds as well. You guys have always given credit to Courtney, Mr. Courtney, brother, Mr. Danny Courtney, about getting the birds from him. Do you, when you give birds to people, do you care if they give you credit, or is that kind of just like it is what it is? We all know where they came from.
It is what it is. I mean, the thing is, one of the things that I'm really big on, and I may be old school, if you get or buy a bird from me, it's your bird. Okay. But I feel that if I got a bird from anyone and I wasn't going to use it, my first thing would be is I would call the person I got the bird, whether I paid for it or whatever, and say, would you like this bird back? If he doesn't, then my second option is to try to get it to someone that will appreciate the bird they're getting. To me, Danny Courtney really helped me. And then we got Leon Kosciuszko here in our club. I mean, he's won the region, got really good birds. There's so many good people that I've met in the rollers. And I'll say this, since 81, I've been flying competition. So that's going on 42 years, because I got married in 81, and I've met a lot of people. And I'd say there's probably two people I don't really care to hang around with. Okay, they have their own opinion, and we know without me saying anything, opinions like, you know what.
Yeah.
And so I just keep my distance and be respectful. I
Right.
don't have to be rude.
Right.
But it's been a great, great hobby. I've learned a lot about the birds in my ministry, how to deal with people. It's just a great hobby. We got all different walks of life, and it's just so awesome. I think we have the best hobby because really you can enjoy your hobby in your own backyard, and you don't have to deal with a lot of people if you don't want to. It's your choice.
Right.
But it's not what happens, it's how you respond to what happens. And I have met great people in this hobby, friends that I have for life, people we talk maybe once a week, just check on each other. It doesn't always have to be birds.
Right.
But I've said this before, good birds are going to come and go. But the friendships you make, they're going to last forever. And that's, to me, the most important.
Right. I agree. Yeah, I think sometimes, I mean, I don't want to get, out there, but I think sometimes that, people get a little crazy and don't, don't really respect each other. And that's really not something you want in the sport. You know what I'm saying? It's not good for promoting the sport, and it's not good. If you guys have if you have something you want to talk about, that's, totally fine, and do it with level heads. But I do think there's some people that, I don't know. It's different.
Well, if you have disagreements, you can disagree. You don't have to be hateful.
Right.
And
Right.
a lot of stuff too. I saw some last month. I tried not to comment on things, but when you start talking like that, and let's say we got new people wanting to get in, they don't want to see that. They don't need to see that. I've been involved in where things have happened, and you thought, man, that just left a bad taste in your mouth. It's not worth it. They're just birds. Everybody's trying to breed the perfect bird, and I'm going to tell every roller guy out there, you're never going to do it because we're imperfect humans. So we'll
Right.
never breed the perfect bird. And so let's just do the best we can, enjoy each other, enjoy this hobby, and try to recruit young people. I know it's difficult. I've got kids that come around and help me feed the birds, and I just try to get them involved as much as I can.
Right.
And hopefully someday they'll get the bug, Who knows?
Right. You have anything else? Anything you'd like
I
to talk
I
about?
do want to say this, and I know there's a lot of talk about rules and changing this and changing that. I think that the rules are fine the way they are. Okay. So let me
What
just tell
rules
you
are we
this.
talking about
Well,
exactly?
people talking about different depths and stuff.
Oh, okay.
A
Okay.
10-foot bird, I've seen some awesome 10-foot birds, but I think that should be the minimum.
And that's
Okay.
in the rules, right? It needs to
Right.
be at least 10
Right.
foot.
And but here's the thing is we can make it so difficult, and I'm not saying compromise, but we can make it so difficult, it's discouraging. When I first got into rollers, when I first learned about competition, Donald led Doug Reed. I mean, great roller guy. But the rules in California, where I was, you had to fly 20 birds. You only had 2 minutes to call time in. You only had 5, 10s, 15s, and 20s. There was no odd numbers in there. And if one bird came down before 20 minutes, it didn't matter what you had, you were disqualified. So there were really tough rules.
Right.
So we've had the club here on and off with different guys getting in and out. And so at one time we flew 12 birds because the young guys didn't have enough birds. Well, we had a guy that only had 9 birds. So we made it, the most he could score was a 3/4 turn. We had one guy, all he had was 6 birds because he got tore up. Well, you're not going to discourage a guy to fly. We let him fly 6 birds, but all he could do was score a half turn.
Right.
My deal is get people involved. Yeah, I want the best bird I can breed. And like I say, I breed for speed first, frequency second, and depth last. Because, I mean, we know it's got to go minimum of 10 feet. Anything other than that, it's nothing. But I've seen some outstanding birds from 10 to 30 feet. I've seen some good deep birds. And I want to say this, that Region 3A, Jeff DeWitt has scored the highest I've ever judged in 20 birds, and Troy Copeland last year scored the highest I've ever scored in 11 bird. And prior to that, it was Larry Phillips. You got a real good region there. So judges, if you ever get asked to judge, you're being honored to judge 3A. That's a good, and not that any other region's worse. I don't mean that. They're just, you would definitely enjoy it, and you're going to see good birds.
Great birds, yeah. That's from what you've told me and stuff. Yeah, I guess they had some really good birds out there. Well, I guess this is kind of the end of it. I mean, we've talked about everything. You said what you know. I asked you if you had anything that's what you wanted to
Let
say.
me
So
just say one more
okay,
thing. Okay, so I'll close again with this, and you'll hear me say this over and over. Enjoy the birds, enjoy the hobby, enjoy the trip, make some good friends, long-lasting friends. Birds are going to come, they're going to go. Birds are going to die. Keep the relationships alive, and I hope everybody does good. I'm still wanting to win. God bless y'all.
yeah. Just before we leave, the Tennessee Spin Masters are going to be hosting a lawn show on June 10th. We're going to be, promoting it here shortly. So if you're watching this and you'd like to come out and be a part of that, you're more than welcome to. We're opening it up to other clubs and whoever would like to come. So if that's something you're interested in,
You can
just
enter birds
let us know, and you can also enter birds. We're going to have a certain amount of slots to sell as far as for birds. So we'll be posting about that on our Facebook page, Tennessee Spin Masters. So if you would like to come out to that, we'd love to have you. But that's it for this interview. So thank you for watching.
Thanks a lot.